Imagine, you show up to a theater, right? You're an actor, you got your costume on, and you're totally ready to go.
Right, you're just waiting for your cues.
Exactly. You walk out onto the stage, expecting someone to hand you your script. But then you look around and realize, there's no director. The seats are empty. And the script they handed you, it's completely blank.
Oh, wow. That is a terrifying feeling.
Right. Someone just tells you, hey, you're the star, make up the plot. You can do literally whatever you want. And at first, that sounds like this ultimate liberation.
Yeah, for about 2 seconds, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until this cold, sinking dread just washes over you. Because if you can do whatever you want, and the play ends up being a total disaster, it is entirely 100% your fault.
You have absolutely no one to blame but yourself.
You really don't.
Yeah.
And that abrupt transition, from comfortable actor to totally terrified, unscripted improviser, captures the exact psychological whiplash we're looking at today.
It really does. It's that jarring moment when you look around at your own life and realize, wait, there might not actually be a grand pre-written script dictating my path.
Which is the core focus of our deep dive today. We are exploring the heavy and honestly often misunderstood concepts of existentialism, specifically the burden of absolute freedom.
And how we actually go about creating meaning in a world that, refuses to just hand it to us on a silver platter.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I do need to state something pretty important for our listeners.
Yeah, good call. Let's set the ground rules.
Because we are diving into philosophical frameworks that explore a world without a predetermined cosmic order, we are exploring the author's philosophical arguments today as impartial guides.
Right.
We aren't endorsing any specific religious or non-religious viewpoints.
Right.
Our goal is simply to unpack the fascinating ideas contained in these sources so you can weigh them for yourself.
And this is so crucial because this isn't just an abstract, dusty academic exercise. It's a deeply personal, everyday challenge.
Oh, for sure. It starts with this really fundamental shift in how we view human nature.
Yeah, it starts with the jarring realization of what adulthood actually entails. Because when you're a child, you basically live in a world of given answers.
Your parents, your teachers, they essentially hand you a complete rule book.
Exactly. They tell you what is right, what is wrong, what success looks like, and, who you are supposed to be. Your only job is just to follow the instructions.
But then you grow up, and as you transition into adulthood, all that prepackaged certainty just dissolves.
You hit a wall, the rules are no longer absolute, and the blueprint you were handed turns out to be entirely blank.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had a very specific, almost mechanical way of explaining why that blueprint is blank.
He did, yeah.
And it completely flips our usual understanding of human purpose on its head.
What's fascinating here is how Sartre illustrates this with a really simple analogy. Think of a paper knife, or really any basic tool.
Like a letter opener or something?
Yeah, exactly. Before a paper knife is ever manufactured, an artisan conceives of it. They have a specific purpose in mind cutting paper, and they design the tool to fulfill that exact purpose.
Right, so the concept comes first.
Yes. In philosophical terms, the knife's essence, its purpose and definition precedes its existence. It is defined before it's even created.
And for centuries, humanity viewed itself the exact same way.
We did. We assumed we were designed by a higher power or some cosmic order with a specific preloaded purpose. We thought our essence preceded our existence. We just had to, figure out what that purpose was.
But Sartre argues that if there is no cosmic artisan, if there's no predetermined plan out there, then the formula is completely reversed.
Precisely. For human beings, existence precedes essence.
Meaning we just exist first.
We just show up in the world, conscious and aware, but entirely undefined. There is no built-in purpose encoded into our DNA.
So we aren't born as, the artist or the leader or the failure.
Nope. We just are. And because we just are, we are tasked with the monumental, totally unguided job of defining our own essence through the choices we make.
Wait, hold on. If we are completely free to invent our own essence, doesn't that just lead to a terrifying void?
It absolutely does.
Because if there is no script, going back to that stage analogy, there's no director to tell you if your performance is actually any good.
Right.
You are standing on a stage, the lights are blinding, the audience is staring at you, and you have to invent the dialogue in real time. If the play is a disaster, you can't blame the writer.
And that is the exact terror of existence preceding essence. You are entirely stripped of excuses.
Wow.
You can no longer say, oh, I am this way because of my nature, or I failed because it just wasn't meant to be. You are the sole author of your life.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if standing on that stage with no lines is such a nightmare, we have to ask why philosophers treated this realization as a necessary, even liberating breakthrough.
Yeah, why is it a good thing? To understand the liberation, we have to look at the historical and psychological diagnosis provided by Friedrich Nietzsche.
The guy who famously declared, God is bad.
Exactly. But it is so critical to understand that he wasn't making a triumphant or mocking statement there.
He wasn't.
No, he was acting as a cultural diagnostician. He was observing the massive shifts of the 19th century, the Enlightenment, the rise of the scientific revolution.
The crumbling of those old agrarian societies, right? Where everyone knew their exact, inescapable place in the hierarchy.
Yes. If your dad was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. But he was diagnosing a profound shift. The old systems of absolute certainty were collapsing, and humanity was losing its traditional constraints.
Losing the constraints, yeah, but also losing the safety net.
Right.
Because when a rigid, absolute order vanishes, you don't just lose the comforting idea that everything happens for a reason. You lose the chains that kept you locked in a specific role.
Think about someone who grows up in a highly restrictive environment, right? Believing they absolutely must follow a single predefined path.
Like, they are told they have to take over the family business, marry a specific type of person, and live in a specific town.
They are entirely locked into a script written by their ancestors. Every single decision has already been made for them.
But then, the absolute certainty of that worldview cracks. They realize those strict paths aren't universal laws of physics.
No, they're just social habits.
Right, and suddenly the realization hits them. They aren't locked into any role.
That realization leads directly to what Albert Camus described as the existential fork in the road.
The fork in the road, okay.
Camus observed that when the illusion of a ready-made universe shatters, you are left facing an absurd reality. The universe doesn't inherently care about you. It doesn't offer meaning.
It's just silent.
Exactly. And faced with that silence, you have two options. You can either fall into crushing despair, feeling entirely abandoned and paralyzed by the lack of direction.
Or you can take on the monumental task of creating your own meaning from scratch.
Yes.
It's a massive paradox, honestly. Losing absolute certainty is the only thing that actually grants you the freedom to choose your own values.
Right. Because if the world already had a built-in meaning, you wouldn't be a free agent.
You would just be an employee of the universe, blindly following an employee handbook you didn't even write.
I love that analogy. True freedom only appears the moment the pre-written script vanishes. As long as you believe someone else is writing the story, you are just an actor hitting your marks.
But man, this liberation comes at a tremendously steep price.
It really does.
And that price is what paves the way to the core tension of this entire philosophy. Because we have this beautiful, empowering theory of liberation.
You are free. You are the pilot of the plane.
Yeah, but then we hit the crushing reality of what that actually feels like on a random Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Because if this freedom is so incredibly liberating, why do so many people feel completely paralyzed by it?
Well, this is the existential paradox. We loudly claim to want freedom, we celebrate it, we demand it, we build entire societies around the concept of it.
Sure.
But when we are actually handed absolute, unadulterated freedom to define our own lives, we are terrified of it. An infinite number of choices doesn't usually feel like a playground.
It feels like a void.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate menu anxiety, but applied to your actual soul.
Yes.
If there are 1,000 items on the menu and no one to recommend the chef's special, the fear of making the wrong choice becomes totally paralyzing.
Sartre articulated this paralysis with perhaps his most debated declaration. He said, "Man is condemned to be free."
Condemned. That sounds like a prison sentence.
Right, but he isn't saying freedom is a literal punishment handed down by a judge. He's saying it is an inescapable structural reality of human existence.
Because without a preset human nature, you are forced to decide who you become every single day.
Whether you want to or not. Even choosing not to choose is a choice you are entirely responsible for.
Imagine standing before a major, life-altering intersection. Say you have to decide whether to stay in a stable but totally unfulfilling career or risk everything to start your own business.
That's a huge decision.
In a world with a cosmic plan, there is a right path and a wrong path. Your job is just to guess which one you are destined to take.
And if it fails, you can comfort yourself by saying, well, the universe had other plans, it just wasn't meant to be.
Exactly. But in the existentialist view, there is no cosmic plan. There is no objectively right path sitting out there waiting to be discovered. You carve the path by walking it.
And because of that, if you choose wrong, if you end up miserable 10 years down the line, you have to look in the mirror and say, I did this, I made the wrong choice, and there is no one else to blame. That level of unmitigated accountability is honestly staggering.
It's heavy.
It is. And Nietzsche warned about this specific danger of dismantling old belief systems. He argued that if you are going to break away from old values and old scripts, you are fundamentally obligated to endure the agonizing labor of creating new ones.
You can't just leave a vacuum.
Right. If you tear down the old house but refuse to build a new one, you don't just stand in a sunny, open field of freedom. You freeze in the winter wind.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
We are framing this as if humanity is just bravely struggling to handle the sheer majesty of absolute freedom. But let's be real here.
Okay.
Do people actually want absolute freedom? What if, fundamentally, we despise the idea of being the sole authors of our lives?
That's a dark thought, but a good one.
Maybe what most people really want isn't an open field. Maybe they just want a slightly larger cage, just enough room to pace around and feel like they're making choices, but with sturdy enough bars that they never have to carry the agonizing mental weight of true responsibility.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your slightly larger cage analogy strikes at the very heart of human psychology.
It does, right?
Because the profound dread people experience doesn't necessarily stem from the philosophical realization that the world is inherently meaningless. It stems from the exhausting realization that meaning is no longer provided on a silver platter.
You have to do all the work.
Building the cage, maintaining the bars, deciding where the cage sits, that is entirely your own job. And frankly, the human brain isn't wired to constantly endure that level of cognitive load. We crave cognitive ease.
We crave it so much that we have developed an incredibly robust coping mechanism. Because the weight of ultimate responsibility is so totally overwhelming, we do the most natural thing in the world.
We run away.
We actively try to escape our own freedom.
The phenomenon of escaping freedom is perhaps the most observant critique existentialism offers about modern life. When an old belief system collapses, whether that is a religious framework, a political ideology, or a set of family expectations, people rarely sit comfortably in the new open space.
No, they almost immediately rush to find a new system to submit to.
Exactly. And they don't do this because the new system is intellectually rigorous or demonstrably truer. They do it because it offers the comforting warmth of certainty.
It offers a fresh script.
Yes.
Sartre had a very specific cutting term for this mechanism, didn't he? When you pretend you don't have a choice, just so you can avoid the responsibility of making one.
He called it bad faith.
Bad faith.
Operating in bad faith is the act of lying to yourself about your own freedom. It occurs whenever you say, I have to do this, or I have no choice, when in reality, you actually do have a choice.
You simply don't want to endure the consequences, the risk, or the social friction of making it.
Exactly.
This plays out in wildly relatable everyday scenarios. Think about someone staying in a toxic job.
Oh, we all know someone like this.
Right. They wake up miserable every day, their health is deteriorating, but they tell themselves and everyone around them, I have no choice. The economy is terrible. I have a mortgage. I am stuck.
But the existentialist would look at that person and say, you are not mathematically stuck.
No, you could quit today. You could sell your house, downsize your life, move to a cheaper city, and work as a barista while you figure things out.
The reality isn't that they have no choice. The reality is that the financial risk and the blow to their ego are too terrifying to face, so they hide behind the comforting lie of helplessness.
And we see bad faith evolving into highly sophisticated modern forms too. Think about how we interact with technology.
Oh, absolutely. We constantly use algorithms to tell us what movies to watch, what music to listen to.
Who we should date.
Yes. Even what political opinions we should hold. We are practically begging algorithms to make our choices for us so we don't have to face the anxiety of defining our own tastes or defending our own values.
It is so much easier to let a machine dictate your essence than to painstakingly forge it yourself.
We even do it with our personal values. People live their entire lives going through the motions of a specific lifestyle simply because it is what their peer group expects of them.
Because defining their own unique set of values and standing up for them is socially terrifying.
Yeah.
So they hide behind the excuse of, well, this is just how things are done.
Right.
So I have to ask you, listening to this right now, where are you operating in bad faith? Have you ever labeled a difficult, incredibly risky choice as having no choice just to let yourself off the hook.
Just to avoid being the one who has to pull the trigger on a massive life change. This raises an important question, perhaps the most uncomfortable one we face today. Do we actively seek out the safety of the idea that our lives are predetermined, not because it's intellectually sound, but purely as an insurance policy for our egos?
Yeah.
Because if my life is predetermined, or if I have no choice because of society or the economy, then my failures are not my fault. I am just a victim of circumstance.
It's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. The universe made me do it.
Precisely.
But let's strip away the bad faith. Let's say someone refuses to run away. They accept the blank page.
They refuse to let society or an algorithm write their script.
Right. What is the actual strategy for living in this unscripted blank space?
Right.
Because you can't just stare at a blank page forever. Eventually, the clock runs out.
And this is where the philosophy pivots from a brutal diagnosis into an actionable strategy. We return to Albert Camus and his perspective on the absurd.
Okay, the absurd.
Camus acknowledged that the world is absurd, it is irrational, it doesn't offer inherent meaning, and it is largely indifferent to human suffering.
Cheerful guy.
Right. But here is the critical pivot. The world's absurdity is merely the setting of the stage. Your reaction to that absurdity is what dictates the quality and meaning of your life.
Which requires a total redefinition of what freedom actually means in practice.
Absolutely.
Freedom is not just doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without consequences.
Yep.
That is a teenager's fantasy of freedom.
True existential freedom is the exhausting process of actively choosing the values you are willing to live by, and then bearing the full, unmitigated responsibility for upholding them in a world that doesn't care if you do.
Consider what that looks like in action. Imagine choosing relentless honesty as your core value.
Or deciding to center your entire existence around alleviating the suffering of others.
The existentialist perspective says you don't do this because a religious text demands it. You don't do it because society rewards it, or because you believe the universe requires it of you.
You do it simply because you chose it.
You looked into the void, and you decided that honesty was the light you were going to hold up.
And because you chose it, you own the consequences of it entirely.
Which brings us back to Sartre's core mechanism for escaping the void. You create your essence through your actions, not your ideas.
It is not enough to sit alone in your room and think, I value creativity, or I am a brave person.
If you never paint the canvas, if you never stand up to injustice, those internal thoughts are entirely meaningless. Your actions are the pen writing on the blank page.
Your essence is nothing more and nothing less than the sum total of your actions. Not your intentions, not your unfulfilled potential, not the secret goodness in your heart. You are what you do.
I find that incredibly empowering, but also a bit devastating.
It's a lot to carry.
It means that the societal default paths we talked about, going to the right school, getting the corporate job, buying the house, climbing the ladder, they aren't laws of physics. They are just social habits.
Realizing that you can simply step off that path, that the guardrails are actually just painted lines on the road, is a superpower.
But it means you actually have to drive the car.
It is a heavy superpower to wield. Existentialism doesn't promise an easy breezy life. In fact, it practically guarantees a more difficult one, because you can no longer outsource the heavy lifting of moral and practical choices.
But what it does promise is an authentic life.
Exactly. If meaning isn't handed to you from above, then the very act of living, of making conscious, deliberate choices day after day, becomes the act of forging that meaning. The struggle itself is what makes the life significant.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out and look at the whole trajectory of these ideas,
We've covered a lot of ground.
we really have. We start in the childhood comfort of a pre-written script, where the rules are clear and someone else is driving the bus.
Then we hit that terrifying transition into adulthood, the realization that existence precedes essence.
That the director has abandoned the theater, and we are left staring at a blank page. We look at how paralyzing that absolute freedom can be.
And how tempting it is to slip into bad faith, running away to find a new set of rules or algorithms to blindly follow just to escape the anxiety of choice.
But ultimately, we arrive at the realization that the only way forward, the only way to live an authentic human life, is to pick up the pen and become the authors of our own essence, through intentional, relentless action.
It is a profound shift in how we view our own agency. But taking full ownership of your own blank script changes more than just your own life. It radically shifts how you perceive everyone else.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Think about it. If you were the absolute author of your life, grappling with the terror of having no script, then so is everyone else around you.
Right.
What if the people you love, your parents, your partner, your friends, are also just terrified actors staring at their own blank pages?
Oh, wow.
How much of our frustration with other people comes from the fact that we secretly wrote a supporting role for them in our script, and we get angry when they refuse to say the lines we wrote for them?
That is, wow. When you realize everyone is just improvising in the dark, it doesn't just demand radical responsibility from you, it demands radical empathy for everyone else.
Because the fundamental question of existence isn't what is the meaning of life? It is what are you going to do with your life when no one is deciding for you?
That completely reframes everything. You aren't just writing your own story, you're sharing a stage with 8 billion other people trying to figure out their own lines.
Exactly.
So I want to leave you with this to carry into your week. Look closely at the stage you are standing on right now. Examine your routines, your career, your relationships.
Where are you waiting for permission that is never going to come?
Where are you operating in bad faith? Pretending you don't have a choice just because you are afraid of the consequences. The theater is empty of directors.
The page in front of you is completely blank.
The pen is in your hand. What are you going to write next?